Look, I'm going to tell you the truth and you're probably not going to like it. Most of you are working for the wrong master. You think you're working for a boss, a paycheck, or a career, but the reality is much bleaker. You are a slave to your own debt and your own lack of discipline. Money is the most powerful tool on this planet, but it is also a relentless predator. If you don't learn how to hunt with it, it will eventually hunt you down and leave you with nothing but regret at age 65. I've seen thousands of people throw their lives away on things that don't matter, while the wealthy are playing a completely different game with a completely different set of rules. Before we go any further, I want to ask you a very simple, very direct question. If you lost your job today, how many months could you actually survive before you were completely broke? Be honest with yourself. Write that number in the comments right now. Don't hide from it. Facing that number is the first step toward actually changing your life. The reason most people stay poor isn't because they don't work hard. There are people working 3 jobs who are still underwater. The problem is how they think about the capital in their pockets. When you get a paycheck, what do you see? Do you see a new pair of shoes, a nicer car, a $5.50 latte that you're essentially pissing away every single morning? I don't see any of that. When I look at a dollar, I see a soldier. I send my soldiers out to war every single day. Their job is to go out into the market, take prisoners, and bring them back home so I have more soldiers. That's how the wealthy think. Every dollar you spend on something you don't need is a soldier you just sent to its death. You've executed your own financial future for the sake of temporary comfort. I grew up watching my mother, and she was the best investor I've ever known. She had a simple rule that she followed religiously. Never spend the principal, only the interest. She took 15% of everything she ever made and put it into the market. She didn't buy flashy things to impress people she didn't like. She bought dividend-paying stocks and bonds. By the time she passed away, she had built a massive fortune that no one even knew about because she was disciplined. She understood that money isn't for buying stuff. Money is for buying freedom. That is the only reason to want it. If you want a friend, buy a dog. If you want a life where no one can tell you what to do, you need to start treating your money with the respect it deserves. Most of you are house poor or car poor. You're living in a home where the mortgage takes up 50% of your take-home pay, and you're driving a vehicle that loses 10% of its value the second you drive it off the lot. That is financial suicide. I tell people all the time, your mortgage should never ever exceed 1/3 of your after-tax income. If it does, you don't own the house owns you. The wealthy don't care about looking rich, they care about being rich. There is a massive difference. One is about ego and the other is about math. And in the world of business and wealth, math is the only thing that never lies to you. You have to decide right now if you want to be an employee or an employer for the rest of your life. There is nothing wrong with being an employee if that's your choice, but don't complain when you're 70 years old and you're still forced to work because you didn't have the discipline to save 15% of your paycheck when you were 25. The market is a giant machine that rewards patience and punishes emotion. If you cry for your money, it won't cry back for you. It doesn't have a heart. It doesn't care about your feel-good story or why you think you deserve a break. It only cares about results. I've heard over 10,000 pitches in my life. I've seen people lose everything because they were blinded by passion. Passion is overrated. Execution is everything. You can have the best idea in the world, but if you don't know your numbers, you're dead to me. You're a hobbyist, not a business person. The wealthy think in terms of return on investment, not just with their money, but with their time. Time is the only asset you can't buy more of. If you're spending your time on noise instead of signal, you are wasting the most valuable currency you have. Steve Jobs understood this. He focused on 3 to 5 things and ignored everything else. You need to do the same with your finances. Stop buying things to look successful. Every time you buy a $75,000 car on a $60,000 salary, I'm laughing at you. Not because I'm mean, but because you're making a choice to stay in the middle class forever. You are choosing to stay shackled to a desk. The wealthy buy assets, the poor buy liabilities that they think are assets. A house you live in is a liability until it's paid off and you're not bleeding cash every month to keep the lights on. A car is a depreciating piece of metal. If you want to think like the wealthy, you need to start valuing cash flow over everything else. If an investment doesn't pay me to own it, I'm usually not interested. I want dividends, I want rent, I want distributions, I want my soldiers bringing back prisoners while I'm asleep. This isn't about greed. It's about the undying love of freedom, the ability to wake up and do whatever you want because your money is working harder than you are. That's the goal. But you can't get there without the sting of discipline. You have to be willing to be the meanie in your relationship when it comes to the budget. You have to be willing to say no to the vacation you can't afford and the dinner that costs $200. If you can't control your spending, you have a disease, and that disease will eventually kill your dreams. I want you to really think about the choices you've made in the last 30 days. How many of those choices moved you closer to freedom, and how many moved you closer to the dead bird under the nest? The bird that dies under the nest is the one that never learned how to fly because it was too comfortable. Don't be that bird. Get out of your comfort zone, stop making excuses, and start treating every single cent like the soldier it is. If you don't, someone like me is going to end up with your money, and I won't feel a bit of sympathy for you. Look, I don't care about your feelings. I care about your bank account. If you're offended by what I'm saying, good. That means I've hit a nerve, and it's usually the nerve connected to your bad habits. Most people are walking around in a state of financial delusion. They think wealth is something that happens to you, like winning the lottery or getting a lucky break. It's not. Wealth is a calculated, cold-blooded outcome of specific actions repeated over time. The wealthy don't hope to get rich. They follow a roadmap that makes poverty mathematically impossible. The first rule of the wealthy mindset is understanding the difference between income and wealth. Income is what you trade your life for. You give up 40, 50, 60 hours a week of your finite time on this earth to get a check. That is the most expensive way to make money. Wealth, on the other hand, is what you own that makes money while you're in the shower, while you're eating dinner, or while you're playing a round of golf. If you only have income and no wealth, you're one bad day away from a catastrophe. You're a high-functioning pauper. I've met doctors and lawyers making $500,000 a year who are broke because their lifestyle eats every dollar they earn. That's not success. That's a treadmill. You have to learn to embrace the mean side of money. In my family, we talk about money at the dinner table. We teach the kids about the Great Wall of Debt. If you carry a balance on a credit card, you are paying 20% or 25% interest to a bank. Do you realize how insane that is? You are literally making the bank's shareholders rich while you're struggling to buy groceries. There is no investment on the planet that consistently pays 25%, so why would you ever pay that to someone else? Paying credit card interest is a sin against your future self. It is the fastest way to stay poor forever. The wealthy use credit as a tool to leverage assets. They never use it to buy a flat-screen TV they can't afford. People ask me all the time, Kevin, what's the secret to Shark Tank success? It's the same secret as wealth. It's the ability to pivot. Most people are emotionally attached to their bad ideas. They're emotionally attached to their failing businesses or their dead-end jobs. The wealthy are brutally honest with themselves. If something isn't working, if an investment is a dog, you shoot it. You don't keep feeding a dying dog hoping it'll start winning races. You cut your losses and move your capital to something that's actually growing. If you're in a job that doesn't have a path to equity or significant raises and you've been there for 5 years, why are you still there? You're devaluing your own stock every single day you stay. Let's talk about diversification. The average person thinks they're diversified because they have a 401k. That's a start, but it's not enough. The wealthy think in terms of sectors. I don't put more than 5% of my wealth into any one company, and I don't put more than 20% into any one sector. Why? Because I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Nobody does. Anyone who tells you they can predict the market is a liar or a fool. By spreading my soldiers across different battlefields, tech, healthcare, real estate, energy, I ensure that even if one army gets wiped out, the others are still bringing home the spoils of war. This is how you survive a recession. This is how you stay rich when everyone else is panicking. The most dangerous word in the English language for your finances is deserve. I worked hard this week. I deserve a new watch. I had a rough year. I deserve a luxury vacation. No, you don't. You deserve what you can afford without sacrificing your freedom. The wealthy don't buy the reward until the assets have already paid for it. If I want a new watch, I don't take money out of my pocket. I wait until one of my companies pays out a dividend, and I use the extra to buy the watch. The principle remains untouched. The soldiers stay on the field. The watch is essentially free because my money earned it for me. Until you reach that point, you haven't earned a thing. One of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to time the market. They wait for a crash to buy, or they sell when things get scary. That is a loser's game. The wealthy understand that time in the market beats timing the market every single time. Compounding interest is the 8th wonder of the world for a reason. If you start investing $500 a month at age 20, you'll be a multimillionaire by the time you retire. If you wait until you're 40, you're going to have to scramble and live like a monk just to keep your head above water. Math doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't care that you wanted to live a little in your 20s. The cost of living a little when you're young is living a lot like a beggar when you're old. I want you to look at your bank statement from last month. Highlight every single purchase that wasn't a necessity, every subscription you don't use, every meal out that you could have cooked at home for a fraction of the price, every impulse buy on Amazon. Add it up. Now take that number and multiply it by 300. That's roughly what that money would be worth in 20 years if you had invested it instead of spending it. Is that $100 pair of jeans really worth $30,000 of your future freedom? Because that's the real price you're paying. The wealthy see the future value of every dollar. The poor only see the face value. You also need to understand that the world doesn't owe you a living. The participation trophy generation is in for a very rude awakening when they enter the global economy. Capital goes where it is welcomed and stays where it is well treated. It doesn't care about your social causes or your personal drama. It flows toward efficiency. To be wealthy, you must be efficient. You must be the most productive version of yourself. This means constant learning. The wealthy are obsessive about information. I read for hours every morning. I want to know what's happening in the markets in London, Tokyo, and New York before most people have even finished their first cup of coffee. Information is the fuel for your money-making machine. If you're sitting there thinking, well, it's easy for him to say he's a billionaire, you've already lost the game. I started with nothing. I started in a basement. I've been fired. I've had businesses fail. The difference between me and the person who stays broke is that I viewed every failure as a tuition payment to the University of Hard Knocks. I didn't blame the economy, I didn't blame the government, and I didn't blame my boss. I took total 100% ownership of my financial situation. Until you stop playing the victim, you will never be a victor. The wealthy take responsibility for their losses, which is why they are eventually able to take credit for their wins. Think about your circle of friends. Are they talking about ideas and investments, or are they talking about other people and TV shows? You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. If your inner circle is financially illiterate, you will be too. The wealthy seek out mentors and peers who challenge them and push them to be better. They don't want to be the smartest person in the room. They want to be in a room where they can learn how to get to the next level. If your friends are dragging you down to the bar every Friday night to blow your soldiers, you need new friends. It sounds harsh, but the road to wealth is often a lonely one until you reach the destination. Stop looking for the magic pill. There is no one weird trick to getting rich. It's boring, it's tedious, and it requires a level of discipline that most people simply don't have. But that's the good news, because most people are lazy and undisciplined. The door is wide open for you if you're willing to do the work. The wealthy think in decades, the poor think in days. Shift your perspective. Start looking at the horizon instead of your feet. I'm just getting started on this. There's a whole other level to how the wealthy protect what they've built and how they leverage taxes to keep more of their hard-earned capital. But you can't get to the advanced level until you master the basics of the soldier mindset. Wait until you hear how the elite actually handle their taxes and legal structures. That's where the real magic happens. Tell me, are you ready to stop being a servant to your bills and start being the general of your own army? Now we're getting into the deep water. Once you've mastered the discipline of the soldier and you've started to build your army, you have to learn the most important lesson of all, how to keep it. The world is full of people trying to take your money. The government wants its share, the banks want their fees, and the litigious society we live in is always looking for a way to sue someone with deep pockets. The wealthy don't just focus on making money, they are obsessed with capital preservation and tax efficiency. If you make $1 million and the government takes $500,000 of it, you didn't make $1 million. You made $500,000 and worked 6 months for free as an uncompensated employee of the state. The wealthy understand that the tax code is not just a list of rules. It's a series of incentives. The government wants you to provide housing, so they give you tax breaks for real estate. They want you to provide jobs, so they give you deductions for business expenses. They want you to invest in the future, so they give you lower rates on long-term capital gains. The poor and the middle class see taxes as a bill they have to pay. The wealthy see the tax code as a roadmap for where to put their money to keep it safe. If you aren't spending time understanding how to minimize your tax liability legally, you are hemorrhaging wealth. It's not about what you make, it's about what you keep. I want to talk to you about the death tax and the stupidity tax. The death tax is what happens when you don't plan your estate, and the government swoops in to take a massive bite out of what you intended for your family. The stupidity tax is what you pay every time you make an emotional decision, like selling in a panic when the market drops 10%. The market is a transfer mechanism that moves money from the impatient to the patient. When the market crashes, the wealthy don't hide under their beds, they go shopping, they buy the best companies in the world at a discount. They know that volatility is the price of admission for long-term wealth. If you can't handle a 20% drop in your portfolio without losing your mind, you shouldn't be in the market. You should keep your money in a mattress and watch its purchasing power get eaten alive by inflation. Inflation is the silent killer. It's the thief that comes in the night and steals the value of your savings. If you have $100,000 sitting in a savings account earning 0.1% interest and inflation is at 3% or 4%, you are losing money every single day. You're getting poorer while doing nothing. The wealthy don't hold large amounts of cash for long periods. Cash is trash. Cash is just a temporary place to hold your soldiers before you send them back into the fray. You want to own things that go up in value, equities, hard assets, intellectual property. You want to be on the side of the equation that benefits from rising prices, not the side that gets crushed by them. Let's talk about leverage. This is where things get dangerous, and it's where most people get burned. The wealthy use debt as a scalpel. The poor use it as a chainsaw. If you borrow money to buy a rental property where the tenant pays the mortgage and you get a check every month, that is good debt. You're using someone else's money to build your equity. But if you use margin to gamble on some speculative crypto coin or a hot stock tip you heard from your cousin, you're an idiot. You're playing Russian roulette with your financial future. I never use leverage on something that doesn't have predictable cash flow. Never. If you can't survive a downturn with the debt you have too much debt. You also need to learn the power of no. The more successful you become, the more people will come to you with opportunities. Most of these opportunities are just ways for other people to spend your money. I say no to 99% of what comes across my desk. I'm looking for the 1% that has a clear path to profitability, a moat around the business, and a founder who is willing to work 25 hours a day to make it happen. You need to say no to the distractions. You need to say no to the get-rich-quick schemes. You need to be the gatekeeper of your own capital. If you don't protect your money, nobody else will. One of the most important traits of the wealthy is situational awareness. You need to know when the wind is changing. We are living in a time of massive technological disruption. If you're still thinking about money the same way your parents did in the 1970s, you're going to be left behind. The digital economy has changed everything. You can reach millions of people from a laptop in your basement. You can automate your investments. You can build a brand without spending a dime on traditional advertising. The wealthy are always looking for the new frontier, while the poor are trying to protect the old ways that are already dying. I don't care where you started. I don't care if you have a fancy degree or if you dropped out of high school. The math of wealth is the same for everyone. It requires the same discipline, the same cold-blooded logic, and the same relentless pursuit of freedom. You have to be willing to do what others won't so you can live like others can't. It's not a cliche, it's the truth. You have to be willing to be the villain in the eyes of those who want you to waste your money with them. Let them call you cheap. Let them call you obsessed. When they're still working at 75 and you're deciding which of your homes to spend the winter in, we'll see who the real winner is. Money is a mirror. It reveals who you really are. If you're a jerk and you get money, you're just a bigger jerk. If you're a generous person and you get money, you can change the world. But you can't help anyone if you're broke. You can't be a philanthropist if you're worried about your own light bill. Wealth gives you the platform to be the best version of yourself. It gives you the power to protect your family, support your community, and leave a legacy that lasts long after you're gone. That is why we play the game. Not for the numbers on a screen, but for the impact we can have. I've given you the roadmap. I've told you how the wealthy think, how we act, and how we protect our empires. Now the ball is in your court. You can close this video and go back to your old habits, or you can decide that today is the day you start treating your money with the respect it deserves. You can start sending your soldiers out to work for you instead of sending them to their deaths. The path to wealth is right in front of you, but you're the only one who can walk it. Don't wait for the right time. The right time was 10 years ago. The second best time is right now. Start with 15%. Automate it so you never even see it. invest it in a broad market index, and don't touch it for 20 years. If you do that one simple thing, you will be ahead of 90% of the population. It's not rocket science, it's just discipline. And discipline is the only thing standing between you and the life you want. If you found this helpful, do me a favor. Don't just like the video. That doesn't do anything for your bank account. Take action. Change one habit today, cut one subscription, set up your automatic investment. Tell me in the comments which one you're doing. I want to see you win, but I'm not going to hold your hand. The market doesn't have a heart, and neither do I when it comes to business. Now get out there and start building your army. I'll see you at the top, or I'll see you from the top. The choice is yours. Would you like me to analyze your specific financial habits or help you draft a business plan based on these principles? Tell me what your next move is.